Thank you. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Committee of the Whole for Finance and Administration Committee on September 12th, 2023. In attendance, we have Councilmember Anderson, Councilmember Kritzer, Councilmember Stewart, and myself, Councilmember Forsyth. If anyone else is to join us, I will announce them. We have 7 items on our agenda. And our first item is Small Business Resiliency Grants with Philly Marsh and Director Helland.
Thank you. I'll introduce the topic for this evening. So good evening, council members. The title of this agenda item is Approval of the ARPA Small Business Resiliency Grant Sub-Recipient Contract. As you may recall, Redmond administered this grant program previously for small businesses in 2020, and that organization has sufficient capacity, infrastructure, and trusted relationships to continue that process with this new grant funding. This also is based on with the community-based organizations so that they can successfully administer this program that's paired with substantial programming to help our businesses with sustainable operational growth. We're asking for direction this evening to put this item on the September 19th consent agenda. That's why we're here tonight at FAC. And I will now turn the microphone over to Philly Marsh to provide more information.
Thank you, Carol. As Carol mentioned, we're seeking approval from City Council for a contract with Redmond to administer the ARPA-funded 2023 Small Business Resiliency Grants. As a quick disclaimer, City staff have followed federal guidance and confirmed that the subrecipient is not suspended or debarred from doing business with the federal government. We completed a pre-award risk assessment and informed the subrecipient of monitoring and reporting policies that's standard for this federal ARPA funding. This grant program incorporates lessons learned from previous grant applications to remove barriers for businesses to apply and access the funding, as well as foster sustainable support for businesses through the program's educational and technical assistance. The Small Business Grant Program will provide 100 businesses with $5,000 cash grants, along with small business financial education and capacity building programming. In addition to Redmond administering the grant program, Redmond will provide funding and technical assistance to community-based organization partners that will promote this grant opportunity and assist members of their community with the application process. The program will not only support businesses with cash grants, helping to mitigate the impact of COVID, but also work with partners to provide in-language programming to help diverse small businesses access additional funding and capital to successfully operate and grow their businesses. We request direction to place this item on the September 19th consent agenda. And with that, I open it up for questions or comments.
Anybody have any questions, comments? Council Vice President Kritzer.
Very excited to see this. Thank you for the work on it, and thanks to Redmond as well for being such a good partner. A couple questions. One is, I noticed that nonprofits are not going to be eligible entities, or they were eligible in the last round. Is that correct, or?
They were, and really that is based on a couple of things. One, we have 109 nonprofits registered in Redmond compared to over 6,000 businesses. And then there were previous grants that were targeted for nonprofits, especially arts and cultural nonprofits. And then lastly, because this is tied with that technical assistance for businesses, the programming is really just more tailored to businesses and the for-profit businesses. So that's why we made that decision to really focus on that aspect based on previous needs met.
That makes sense, yeah. And I guess it's something for us to look at for the future, whether there's any sort of similar program we might want to look at for our nonprofits in the area. But it does make sense, if we want to really tailor that. Can you share a little bit more about the work that's envisioned with the community-based organizations that Redmond will do, and what kind of capacity support they're intending to provide?
Yeah, so first off, just help with in-language and culturally relevant information sessions. So there'll be webinars introducing this grant opportunity, work with translated material, and then really it's that subsequent to the cash grant, that programming and accessing capital. So understanding that community's particular challenges or barriers for accessing capital. There's a couple of state programs that are being developed that will be coming out that will provide low interest loans to underserved communities. So really wanting to have a partnership approach in helping businesses be able to access that in the future, and then understand those intricacies of any barriers there may be and be able to overcome that moving forward.
Will it include compensation for these nonprofits for the CBOs for their staff time that's spent on this?
Yes, so part of the contract is a separated amount that's dedicated to the community-based organizations.
Cool, great. Just want to make sure it wasn't just passed through on the programming they do, but also supporting that overhead, because I know I've heard that from some of them in terms of what they put in. So really glad to see that. The only other comment I would make is that I think this is such an exciting thing for us to do. Would love that. I don't know if we either want to put it on new business or if there's just an opportunity once the program gets rolling for us to get a little update at our council business meeting, just to be able to highlight that it's happening and make sure that a diversity of folks know about it. We use at least our council platform to share about it. So we'd love to see that.
Definitely. We are scheduled, if approved on consent next week, we are scheduled currently to launch or open the grant application process on October 16th. And it will be open for about a month, and we'll be doing a postcard mailing that's in language or has a different languages, pointing them to a website as part of that. But we'd love to come back and either promote it through council or share out the initial results.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? That kind of dovetailed with my note here to just let us know when it opens so that we can share it out through our social media channels and our emails and all of that, so that we can get as many people. I know there's a very limited number of these grants, but get as many people to know about it as quickly as possible. Thank you. Everyone good for this to go on consent on 9/19? All right. We'll see you then.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is approval of the second amendment of the joint interlocal agreement regarding the community development block grant. We have.
Thank you. I'll introduce this item again. As you noted, approval of the second amendment of the joint interlocal agreement regarding the community development block grant. If this sounds familiar, you're probably right, because you approved the first amendment on August 2nd, and because of feedback that we've received from the county, another amendment is in order. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Alaric Bien to describe the process.
So thank you. After the county submitted their amendments to HUD informed them that they did not accept the amendments, that the language was not sufficient. So they gave them a new deadline of September 28th, and since that time, the county has met with HUD attorneys to go through the language and to make sure that it's going to be acceptable. And you can, in your packet, there's the first attachment is the redlined version of the First Amendment, and the second attachment is the clean version of the Second Amendment. So that's kind of it. Do you have any questions?
Any questions from council? Everyone good to see this on consent on the 19th?
Great, thank you.
Fantastic.
Easy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have our 2023-24 budget adjustment number 1 with Finance Director Kelly Cochran. Finally got to say your full title. It's real. It's real.
Good afternoon. So Marissa Flynn is with me this afternoon to walk you through actually 2 budget adjustments. The first one is our cleanup a budget adjustment, which, or excuse me, that's correct. It's wrong. The beginning fund balance adjustment. So it really just realizes our actual beginning fund balance in replacement of those that we budgeted. I wanted to just point out to council or remind council that this adjustment includes an adjustment for all beginning fund balances except for the general fund. So the general fund balance, we have calculated the carryover balance is about 6.97 And I am in the process of a couple of things. First is a quarterly financial report that we're scheduled to bring to you on October 3rd as part of a staff report. And then we have 2 study sessions scheduled in November to go over the kind of preliminary forecast for this biennium, or the final forecast for this biennium, as well as a preliminary forecast for 25 and 26. And so kind of looking at all of those numbers, I'm hoping to put discussion about that beginning fund balance and the use of it during that forecast presentation after we've been able to see how are we doing this year, how are some of the funding that we have allocated for this biennium going, do we feel any risk that we need to hold on to that, and then kind of open it up to conversations. Typically, it's one-time money, and it will usually go to the CIP. There's a little bit more risk in the general fund in the way that we funded some of the things in this current biennium, and so I just kind of want to hold on to it and see what we're looking at. Okay, so I'm going to have Marissa walk through this adjustment, but please let us know if you have any questions.
Right, thank you, Kelly. I am Marissa Flynn, Senior Financial Analyst. As Kelly mentioned, this first budget adjustment of the biennium is to recognize beginning fund balances. What we've budgeted for beginning fund balances were our best estimates at the time. Now we have actual results because the year 2022 has closed. As you can see, if you look at Exhibit 1 for this item, most funds have increases in their beginning fund balances, which means that we spent less last year than we were anticipating, and we need to adjust it so that we can continue those efforts in the current biennium. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions on budget adjustment number 1? Councilmember Stewart.
Just a comment. Thank you so much for the update on the rest of the financial story that we're going to see, and really excited to get into that starting October 3rd. Well, starting today with this lovely table in front of us, but October 3rd, and then with the study sessions, really eager for that. So thank you. I will look forward to that. I didn't see any big surprises, anything that jumped out at me in Exhibit 1. Is there anything you'd like to point out to us in particular?
No, ma'am.
Okay, that's a good answer. That's a great answer. Okay,
it's as expected.
Awesome, thank you.
Council Vice President Kritzer.
Well, I'll point out one just to make sure that I'm understanding exactly what's going on here in terms of kind of the nitty gritty. So for example, for fire equipment reserve, I see there's the beginning fund balance adjustment is like $2.2 million. So we're going from 5.9 adopted budget to 8.1. Is that mostly, it's both, when we're talking about the budget adjustment, are we saying that it's going to be adjusting both the amount of funding that we have for it as well as the projected expenditure? Because we're bringing over, I imagine in that there was some project we didn't finish last time that we're now going to be doing, or is that just mostly the funding that we have for it?
So what this represents is the sum of budgeted expenditures and budgeted ending fund balance. So essentially at the end of 2022, we had $2.2 million more in fund balance than we anticipated, which means we spent less on expenditures last year. So this now goes into fund balances and increases our budgeted ending fund balance for the 23-24 biennium. So there could be more resources available, but this we're not budgeting them as expenditures. We're budgeting them in ending fund balance.
Okay, so will we need to take action to actually adjust what projected expenditures we have? So for example, in the fire equipment reserve, if we have $2.2 million more, are we going to take action before the next budget to say we'd like to add a project for $2 million?
If we intended to utilize that, then yes.
Okay, so you would come back in a separate process?
Yes.
Got it. Okay.
Any other questions? Everybody good to see this move forward on October 3rd? Okay. Moving on to budget adjustment number 2.
So the second budget adjustment is a cleanup adjustment. It sort of aligns all of the decisions that council has made and taken action on during this year, and allows us to accept money that we have been granted and move money between funds if necessary. And Marissa's here to go over that adjustment with you.
All right, so there are three main kind of categories that we have included in the second budget adjustment. The first is grants and other revenue sources. This includes both brand new grants and a couple of carry forward grants. For example, the body worn camera grant, which we were awarded in the previous biennium, but we are moving the revenue and expenditures for that grant up to the current biennium. There are a few corrections in here. The majority of those are between funds. For example, we budgeted a project in a CIP fund and realized later on that it was more appropriate that it be in a maintenance fund. So you'll see adjustments here, but that is generally just the transfer of the funding source and then the associated expenditure budget to the proper fund. And then there are a couple of new needs items, M and N. And I would like council's input on whether you'd like to go through each of these items, or if there are specific items that you'd like to discuss, I'd be happy to do it that way as well.
Any thoughts? Yeah.
I just, my sense is that we actually know these items pretty well because we accepted a lot of this money or the work going into it. So I don't personally need a walkthrough on them line by line.
Yeah, I think if anyone has questions on a specific item, that we are pretty familiar with most of these. Any questions on any in particular? Yeah, Council Vice President Kritzer.
Can you just speak to the change, what happened with the high-performing buildings project? It seems like it is mostly the way that it's categorized.
Letter H.
Yeah, we had thought that that would be an investment in our own buildings that would be capitalizable, and instead it's more of kind of a, we're giving funding to allow for other facilities to kind of be brought up to speed. So it's not appropriate for us to capitalize. It's something we need to expense. So we're moving it out of that fund.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So now, so the funding actually will be spent on buildings that aren't city-owned buildings versus the original idea was city-owned buildings?
So I don't believe that these are,
You can also get it back.
yeah, I'll need to get back to you on that, but I think that the story is that we are investing in kind of facilities across the city. It's not particular to the city's own facilities.
Interesting. Yeah, I would love to get a little bit more information, just also because that was an area that we were really interested in funding as part of our budget, to be able to understand how that is changing. Part of why I asked about it, whether it was just a fun change or whether it actually, the project as it's developing is
Yep,
changing.
I will send you an email tomorrow afternoon.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? So the only question I have is the transfers for cleanup. Is there after action that has been taken to ensure that some of those, if they were just misfiled or it's not going to happen again in the next cycle, what's the status of what have we learned?
For the cleanup, the transfer cleanup item, yes, we've implemented some new reconciliation processes so that everything ties out perfectly in the future. With regards to, yeah, hopefully. Was that your specific question, or were you interested in the changes between funds as well?
No, just making sure that, we've had a lot of these conversations about making sure that the funds are in the right places, and it looks like you are all catching a lot of those things that we were talking about in the last couple of budget cycles. So just interested in how it's going to go moving forward.
Yep, now that we've identified these issues, we've built checks into our process.
Awesome, thank you. Any other questions on this one? And then pending that follow-up for Councilmember Kritzer's questions, is everyone good to see this on October 3rd? All right. Moving right along. Thank you so much. Next up, we have our second quarter 2023 overtime report.
Good afternoon. We've got Marissa here. She's again completed the quarterly our quarterly overtime report, and she'll walk you through that.
All right, hello again, Council. So through the second quarter of 2023, citywide overtime is totaling $2.91 million, and it's 9.9% ahead of budget expectations. However, total salaries, which includes overtime and regular salaries, are trending 1.2% or $2.15 million under budget. The reason for that is a lot of the overtime is based on vacancies, and we have vacancy savings, which offset that. Fire department overtime is $2.09 million, and it's trending 8.2% ahead of budget. It's primarily driven by firefighter backfill with new recruits in Fire Academy. It is leveling off. I know this has been a topic of conversation in the past several reports. It is leveling off at this point. Police department overtime is $572,000, and they are 17.5% ahead of budget, but they have significant vacancy savings, about $1.02 million. So they are more than offset with their vacancy savings. All other departments are totaling $252,000 in overtime and are 10.9% ahead of budget. And the majority of that is due to increased right-of-way inspections, where the workload is bigger. Are there any questions on this second quarter overtime report?
Councilmember Anderson.
Just to clarify, this is year-to-date information and not quarterly.
Yes, ma'am. This is January 1st through June 30th of '23.
Any other questions? Getting off easy today. And that was informational only, so we appreciate that information. And next up, we have our 2023 Development Services User Fee Study Update.
Give Marissa a rest for a minute, and we'll be joined by Kelly. So we are coming to a study session on the 26th at the end of the month, and so just want to touch base with you as we are putting together those materials, and I'll turn it over to Kelly, who's been doing a great job running this project and study.
Hi, I'm Kelly C., Senior Financial Analyst, and yes, Kelly, as Director Cochran has mentioned, we have been working on the Development User Fee Study, and we plan on going to you all on the September 26th Council Study Session to deliver the preliminary results for this study. Did you have any questions?
If we could just quickly mention what will be included in the presentation, and then just get some feedback if there's anything else that you would like to see included.
Yeah, so the study will cover the cost of service methodology, the fee structure, a review and update of all the fees, policy recommendation. They have gathered comps with neighboring jurisdictions, and a technology fee update recommendation.
Okay. And I also see credit card fee policy recommendation.
Oh, yes.
Technology fee recommendation. I just mentioned that. And our stakeholder engagement feedback. So.
Yes, we plan on having a stakeholder meeting next Monday.
Okay. Any questions from council of information you'd like to see on that study session? Other Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you so much. I feel like, and I could be wrong, but I feel like I just saw an email going out to the community asking for feedback on this one, and then we're already going to have a study session to hear the results to date on this project. So I just want to make sure that there's not too little time in between the final collection of the data and coming before us, or is it already kind of feeling baked and you're feeling ready to come? Just wanted to check in on the timeline there.
We are taking the development user fee study to council in two parts. So our touch on the 26th is just our first touch, and we'll be coming back to you at the first meeting in October with any additional information. If we hear anything unexpected in the stakeholder engagement, then we've got some time to make an adjustment and bring that back to council.
Perfect.
And we'll let you know on the 26th if we think that that's needed.
Okay, looking forward to it. Thank you so much, and thank you both for your work.
Thank you. Other questions? Council Vice President Kritzer?
Thank you. Well, without like a lot to react to in terms of the materials yet, I think one of the things that I'll be interested to hear is how we incorporated thinking about issues around equity into any of this study. Not knowing exactly who it is that these different fees will be impacting, since there's a variety of fees, and to know what the proposals are going to be. But I would say that's kind of an overarching. And then one question on the credit card fee, is that the issue that we had talked about during the budget in terms of switching the cost over to the users?
That is correct. So we've spent some time studying that, understanding where we can make adjustments, what those adjustments should look like, or changes should look like, given what we are allowed to do, given what other jurisdictions are doing. And we're currently working on a timeline to which that we could then implement. So although we have a lot of systems and they are able to charge this fee, we now need to configure the systems and go through all of that testing. And so we're working with our TIS folks to understand when we could actually implement a recommendation for you. So it's going well, a little behind, but going well.
Great, looking forward to that. And then last quick question is on stakeholder engagement. Councilmember Stewart mentioned the email to the community, but did you say you're going to be having a meeting or convening? Or maybe that's what that email said. No,
Yeah, so we have met with One Redmond. We're also in conversations with master builders. But with One Redmond, we had gone to them and asked for participation, and we got some there, but also are just trying to reach the broader community. Tough to bring them in until we had results to look at, and of course, we're coming in hot. So the 18th is our date. We'll get feedback. If it feels like things are unsettled, we'll bring folks back for a second round.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? No? All right, we will see you on the 26th. Thank you so much. The last item on our agenda for this committee meeting is the benefits update and potential Redmond plan changes for 2024. Hello.
Hello, I'm Catherine Laird, Human Resources Director, and I'll introduce this item tonight. So potential Redmond plan changes do go before council for approval, and so we do this on an annual basis. So this is our annual time to do this, and we do it right before the open enrollment period, which starts on November 1st. So Nicole Bruce is here as our benefits administrator, and she will provide you the details of these plan changes.
Great, thank you, Nicole Bruce, and I'm the Benefits Program Manager for the city. And we are coming to request, get approval for you to go to consent agenda on October 3rd. As Catherine mentioned, we have to prepare all the materials, work with our broker, and get rates developed by November 1st for employees, so that's the timeline on that. Redmond is our self-insured plan. We work with Primera, who's our third-party administrator, and Gallagher, our benefits broker, as well as our Employee Benefits Advisory Committee, which is we call EBAC. So between all those groups, we review any potential plan changes and then bring them forward to council, as the personnel manual requires us to do, for your final approval before we're able to incorporate that into our summary plan description. 3 of the changes this year that are being considered align our plan with recent updates in law. We are a self-insured plan. We don't have to make those changes, although we do like to keep our plan compliant, even though we're not necessarily required, because a lot of the items are happening in other plans, so it also keeps our plan up to date and current. The other 2 items being looked at are looking at dental and vision annual limits. And again, keeping in line with the market, looking at employee utilization, and just making sure that our plan is still having good coverage for our employees. 4 out of the 5 items on the attachment, in working with the Benefits Advisory Committee, so we discuss items in July and August meetings. We vote in September. And so we've had the July and August meetings, and I'm getting the sense that they probably will not recommend the dental change. It is a as you can see on the spreadsheet, it's a higher cost item. It's around $50,000, but only 10% of our members are maxing out that benefit. So it's kind of a high cost for not as good of a benefit. The rest of them, the rest of the items seem like they will be likely recommended. I won't know for sure until the vote on the 27th, but that will be part of the attachment. The costs, so all of the costs, if everything was approved, it'd be about $102,800 for the year. Though that cost comes out of the self-insured fund, that increase is already essentially budgeted for. So we budget an increase to our plan each year, and that increase is benefit trend, as well as knowing that we'll likely have some design changes. So this will not have a budget impact, as both our trend and these increases would stay within what we've already budgeted. So really, you would just be approving the summary plan description update. The next steps in the process, again, are to have that vote on the 27th, and then bring the items to consent on October 3rd, to keep in line with that January 23rd effective date. So any questions or comments?
Thank you. Any questions from council members? Councilmember Anderson.
Just a quick process question. Is the EBAC recommendation required for you to bring anything to council on that recommendation about dental?
So we, in our personnel manual, as well as our union contracts, it stipulates the guidelines that we will meet and have a recommendation from EBAC, as well as HR will make a recommendation as well and bring those to council that way.
Who's got the final decision on what goes in the package? Is that council or EBAC or staff?
Council has to approve the changes, but the recommendations come from EBAC and human resources and staff.
Okay. The reason I'm asking that question is if we're, the background for that question is coming from, if we're able to offer an upgraded dental package, to me that makes the benefits for the city a little more competitive, potentially with the private sector. So I'm curious on that, if there's a no recommendation from, or against recommendation from EBAC before it comes to council, would there be a mechanism for council to add that benefit anyway?
Yes, council would be able to do that. So in consent, what we'll do is there'll be a matrix, and you'll see that what all of the benefits are, and that council can approve all of the benefits, even if we identify any of those benefits would be, even if HR, for example, recommends that we don't approve it or that it doesn't get approved, council can still approve it.
Okay, and we will, when we get that information, we'll get utilization information as well.
I'm sorry.
Will we get utilization information as well?
Yes, so right now, excuse me, that is, if you look at the dental plan, it does say on here that 9.34% of employees reach the max.
Okay.
So that's in the
Thank you.
spreadsheet. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Thank you for those answers. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you for this update, and I appreciate all the context. A couple of thoughts. I guess I don't know this, so this may seem like a basic question, but can you say a little bit more about why, as a self-insured organization, we don't have to adopt state mandates?
Yep, so self-insured plans are exempt, and then non-ERISA plans, which we're a government entity, so we're not an ERISA plan. So depending on the legislation, it will sometimes require, but they carve out. So it's really built into the legislation itself and each different proposal. So sometimes they'll say, non-ERISA plans, sometimes they'll say governmental plans, sometimes they'll say self-insured plans. So it's really part of the bill or the legislation itself.
And my understanding from the matrix is that we, as a standard procedure, go ahead and just adopt whatever the state and federal mandates are, like the 3 that are proposed in this packet.
In the past, we have. And I think a lot of, even though we are carved out and the legislation says we don't have to do it, the standard of practice is to, you don't want to be the first test case and lawsuit, potentially of a plan member. And a lot of the legislation, there's really good reason behind doing those things as well. So our plan typically in the past has adopted most of those.
I can appreciate that. And just for the sake of the listening public, the ones that are in front of us are all great things, making sure folks can get their hearing aids replaced on a regular basis, cover termination of pregnancy in full, and some other things related to breast cancer screenings. So these are all great. So my real question, and thank you for your patience with the buildup, is there anything that we should, I don't think we've been covering this topic a whole lot in conversation about our state legislative agenda. And is there anything that the city as an employer might be interested in having more prominent in our legislative agenda related to these kinds of topics?
So what we would do in that particular case is we would work with Gallagher, who's our third-party administrator, and we would say, hey, we're noticing that there are some medical procedures or what have you that we would like to see the state adopt. And so Gallagher would be the one to move that forward.
So I guess what I'm asking or leaving the door open to is I don't think we've yet considered this this topic a whole lot in our legislative agenda. And that's coming back to us again, of course, this fall. So if there are things as you go back and you're going through this process that you might like the council to include in our legislative agenda, I would be very curious to hear from you what that might be. Yeah.
That would be good. Thank you.
Council Vice President Kritzer.
I'm also glad to see some of these things on here. One question around the coverage for termination of pregnancy in full is what's our current coverage?
So currently, it's covered as essentially a medical procedure that is covered as normal plan design. So we would apply deductibles and coinsurance to that. So employees are typically paying their $100 deductible and then 20% up to our out-of-pocket maxes. So it's covered like any other medical procedure. What this legislation did is it put it as part of women's health care. So similar to covering contraceptives and things like that at 100%, they did that through legislation 5 or 6 years ago. It's being covered in that same women's healthcare vein. So with basically no cost shares to the participants of the plan.
Are there any other, just thinking about this and other potential policy changes we might look at in the space around reproductive health care? We as a council have made some statements really in support of making sure that folks in our city, but definitely we should make sure that our own employees have access and support to a full range of reproductive health care. So just curious, is there anything else that you see out there on the horizon or things that are in our policies that we could be making improvements to in the long run that you're kind of eyeing as the next round of updates?
You know, we haven't had a lot. We do participate in benefit surveys through Milliman, Gallagher, different things out there. And our plan is very rich and robust. And because we do incorporate most of the legal changes and things like that that we see, you know, we're really, some of it is more around leave benefits and things like that that we're seeing as far as taking the time. We did add fertility treatments for a couple of years ago for employees who are potentially undergoing like chemotherapy or things like that, and know that they may become sterile. So we did add fertility benefits to our plan. It's not overall, but we're not seeing that necessarily as a trend. You are with some organizations, but it's really not picked up quite as much steam yet. But
well, thanks for tracking that. Be interested to follow up a little more on this and appreciate this package before us.
Councilmember Anderson?
I have a question about the utilization rates again. So one of I noticed it was just noted in the chart, and I think some good information would be, number one, understand if those are, the utilization is mostly family or if it's individual, and in particular, if there are folks that would be categorized as potentially disparately impacted that are utilizing that benefit to full maximum. And I think that we should take that into consideration. If the recommendation comes back that we are not, we shouldn't because of cost, but also if it's impacting a particular group of employees more than others, people who have dental care issues that max out a dental plan may need that care. So I'm concerned about that, and I would love to see some of that breakdown.
So can I get more detail on how, like, would you want it by if it's an employee versus a family member, or age categorized, or how would you?
Well, first priority would be the employee, and then the second priority, I guess, would be the use in the family. But if we are offering a benefit and they are taking advantage of it, a second level of that could be if it is a family benefit, if they have secondary coverage, that they're able to get those full costs covered. In my opinion, I'd be happy to work with you offline on this and figuring out what information I'm specifically looking for. I don't know the rest of the council is interested in this, but that would be one of the concerns I have about saying no to a proposed benefit increase for $50,000, which doesn't sound a lot, but it could help a lot of people. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Kritzer.
I just agree with Councilmember Anderson in that if the group is going to come back with a proposal to say no to what the union had requested, I think it would be helpful for us as a council to really understand a little bit more analysis on that before making a decision, since I think we do care about being able to attend to the needs of our employees.
Thank you. Great conversation. I just have a few questions of my own. So is there any impact to what the employees will be paying out of pocket for the new services contract?
So our employees pay for 20% of the family rate. And so making these changes will increase that rate. So they will pay, still the 20%. But again, it's less than a 1% increase, these changes. And then there's medical trend, and we are looking at an increase this year. We haven't gotten the final rates back, but it actually is looking very promising. Our claims were really good overall this last year. So we're actually looking at, it's kind of nice when you do want to make some changes that increase costs, not that we're not having a huge medical trend that year also. So rates will be going up, but not as significantly as they have in the past year.
So it's a balance of our past year trends and the
plan design changes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep,
Thank you.
Exactly.
Definitely interested in the conversation around the dental benefit. I agree with my fellow council members on that one. And is everything else staying the same, like the orthodontic? I know our orthodontic is amazing. Is that all staying the same?
Yeah, so the dental benefit maximum includes orthodontia, which is very unique, and we get a lot of phone calls from dentists going, "Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, is this really how it works?"
Yeah.
So and the nice thing is most of the time with orthodontia, it's like you get one stab at it in your lifetime.
Right.
Ours, you can use that $2,500 every year. So I think a lot of the people maxing out the dental, unless
Is the orthodontia.
is the orthodontia. But we can definitely get some more breakdown of, is it employees, families, if they can tell if it's orthodontia usage and things like that. So we can ask our claims administrator for more information.
That'd be great, thank you. And the only other area that I had questions about was looking into mental health treatment and mental health, expanding our coverage on the mental health area. I know, for example, there's a lot of work that's been done with ketamine and psilocybins, and health coverage is not necessarily keeping pace with the current data on how good those programs are. So just making sure that we're keeping on the cutting edge of the mental health treatments and the mental health aspect, I think would be one area that I'd definitely be interested in.
Primera, our third-party administrator, is actually coming out with some programs that are going to be launched within 2024, so we would likely make those changes and bring those in 2025.
Okay.
They had some kinks that we, as a new program, we weren't as comfortable with, but that's definitely an area that our Primera and Gallagher are both keeping their eyes on, and we do see really good utilization through our EAP as well. So we offer 8 free visits for employees through EAP. Most of our counterparts out there are at 3 or 5 visits. So we really definitely are focusing on that area in our plan.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you. I think I'm thinking more in the mental health treatments instead of the services.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay, great. Any other questions on this topic? All right, and we will see this back. I'm sorry, I didn't write down when we will see this one back.
For consent on October 3rd.
Okay, and I guess we will wait to hear the updates from the vote and all the things we talked about tonight.
Okay.
Awesome.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other items to discuss? Yeah, Councilmember Kreutzer.
Just a reminder to all council members to be here at 6:30 for our special meeting, since I know sometimes those slip the mind, so.
Yes, thank you. We do have a special meeting at 6:30, and as it appears, we will all need to be here so we have quorum. So I appreciate that very much, and I will see, that brings us to the end of the agenda, and I'll see you all at 6:30. We are adjourned.